My name is Maya Brooks, and the day I stopped being the family's unpaid nursemaid started with one simple sentence. I've sold my company. The words came out steady, though my hands trembled as I stared at their faces on the family video call. My brothers, Alex and Jordan, froze mid-smirk. My sister, Tasha, blinked hard as if the words didn't make sense. And my father, his mouth hung open for the first time in his life. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Tasha asked, laughing nervously. I said I sold my company for several million. The silence was deafening. You could almost hear the air leave the room. "Since when do you have a company?" Alex snorted. "You barely leave the house. You're always taking care of Mom, cleaning up after you all, paying your phone bills." I finished for him. "Yeah, that's me, the invisible one." "Hey everyone, before we start, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this, because what I'm about to tell you will make you think twice about who you call family. Now let's begin." They stared at me through their screens, their faces flickering with confusion and something uglier, fear. "So," I continued, my voice shaking but firm, "starting today, I'm cutting off the family allowances. All of them. You're adults now. It's time you learned how to stand on your own." My father leaned forward. "Maya, don't be ridiculous. You don't understand how these things work. Alex is between jobs and I was between dreams," I whispered. "But none of you cared about that." The call exploded into arguments. Alex yelled about betrayal. Tasha called me selfish. Even my father accused me of abandoning the family that needed me. But I didn't listen this time. I ended the call. The silence that followed felt like thunder in my ears. I sat in my small apartment, a place they didn't even know I owned, staring at my reflection on the dark screen. My hands shook, but my heart beat with a new kind of rhythm. Freedom. For years, I was their shadow, the one who stayed behind while they lived their best lives. They called me the nursemaid, the backup plan, the boring one. When Mom got sick, they promised to help, but it was always me who stayed home. I worked 2 part-time jobs, managed her medication, paid overdue bills, and made excuses when they forgot birthdays or hospital visits. And through it all, they laughed at me. Alex used to say, "Maya, you're too soft. You'll never make it out of this house." Tasha would add, "You should be grateful. At least you're needed." Needed. That word haunted me. Needed, but never valued. Loved, but never respected. That night, after the call ended, I sat by the window and watched the city lights blink through my tears. My phone buzzed again and again, their messages flooding in. Insults, threats, disbelief. I didn't reply. For the first time in my life, I chose silence. I chose myself, but the peace didn't last long. At 2 a.m., Alex called again. When I ignored it, he left a voicemail that made my blood run cold. "You think you can live without us?" he shouted. "You're nothing without this family. Don't forget who you owe everything to." His voice cracked with anger and desperation. I pressed delete and whispered to the empty room, "No, Alex, you're the ones who can't live without me." And for the first time, I smiled, because deep down I knew. Their laughter had ended, and the begging was about to begin. The house I grew up in always smelled like medicine, that sharp, bitter scent that clung to the air no matter how many candles I lit or how often I opened the windows. It was the smell of my mother's pain and my cage. I woke up every morning before the sun, at 4 a.m. sharp. Not because I wanted to, but because Mom's cough would echo down the hallway like a reminder that rest wasn't for people like me. I'd pull on my old sweater, walk into her room, and whisper, "Morning, Mama." She'd smile faintly, her thin hand trembling as I helped her sit up. "You're up early again, sweetheart."
"I always am," I'd reply softly, adjusting her pillow. While I crushed her morning pills and mixed them into applesauce, I could hear the faint thud of music from Alex's room. He'd been out drinking again. Sometimes he'd stumble in at 3 a.m., smelling like smoke and laughter. By the time I was wiping Mom's forehead, he'd be snoring, carefree. That was our rhythm. I worked, they lived.
The mornings were for caring, the afternoons for cleaning, and the nights for crying, quietly into my pillow so no one would hear. Father would come home at dusk, loosening his tie with a sigh. "How's your mother?" he'd ask. And before I could answer, he'd add, "Did you pay the electricity bill?" "Yes, Dad, I used what I had left from my paycheck." He'd nod, distracted, flipping through the mail. He never asked how I was. Maybe he thought I was fine because I didn't complain. Maybe he didn't care. Tasha and Jordan breezed in and out like guests at a hotel. Tasha was the pretty one, always with perfect hair and manicured nails. She'd kiss Mom on the cheek once a week, snap a few photos for social media with captions like, "Taking care of Mom, family first," and then vanish again. Jordan? He called every 2 weeks to check in, which really meant asking if I could transfer money to his account until his music career took off. And through it all, I stayed. I learned how to lift Mom gently, how to change bed sheets without waking her, how to measure her breathing and record every heartbeat like it was sacred. I cooked, I cleaned, I budgeted pennies. Sometimes I'd sit by the window and stare at the sky turning gold over our peeling roof. I used to dream of leaving, of living in a place where no one depended on me for every breath. But guilt was a heavy chain. One evening, I overheard them talking in the kitchen, my siblings, laughing softly over glasses of wine. "I swear," Tasha said, "Maya acts like she's the only one who cares." "Well," Alex replied, chuckling, "someone's got to play the family maid. Better her than me." They laughed.
I stood in the hallway, frozen, holding a tray of medicine. My throat burned, but I didn't say a word. I turned away, walked back to Mom's room and whispered to her, "It's okay, Mama. I've got you." Because I did. No one else did. That night, after she fell asleep, I went into the kitchen to wash their wine glasses. Each glass sparkled under the light, proof that they lived easy while I drowned quietly beneath their comfort. But that was also the night something inside me began to shift. I looked at my cracked hands and realized I had given everything: my time, my money, my dreams. And for what? A pat on the head? A passing thanks? When I went to bed, I didn't cry that night. I just stared at the ceiling and whispered, "They'll see. One day, they'll all see." And I meant it, because even in that old house that smelled like medicine and resentment, a seed of rebellion had finally been planted. It started one night when the world was asleep, when the house was still, and all I could hear was the slow rhythm of Mom's breathing through the baby monitor. I was sitting by the kitchen table, surrounded by empty pill bottles and unpaid bills, staring at my second-hand laptop. The screen flickered weakly, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. I had just $42 left in my account, but that night, I decided I was done living only for survival. I opened a blank document and typed 4 words at the top: CareLink, because caregivers need care too. That was the beginning of my secret. I didn't tell anyone, not my father, not my siblings, especially not Alex, who once said, "You're not business-minded, Maya. You're the type who needs instructions." I smiled bitterly every time I remembered that, because for years, I did live by their instructions. Wake up, cook, clean, manage, repeat. But that night, I made my own. I started researching caregiver burnout, reading stories from people like me, invisible helpers, the ones holding families together with no recognition. I stayed up until 3 a.m., taking notes, designing simple wireframes on free online tools, and teaching myself how to code from YouTube tutorials. I was terrified the first time I tried to write a line of code. My hands trembled like they did when I used to feed Mom her medicine. But something inside me clicked. It wasn't just about building an app. It was about building a way out. The next morning, I was exhausted, my eyes red and burning. But when Mom smiled at me weakly and said, "You're such a good girl, Maya," it almost broke me. Not because it hurt, but because I realized how little she knew about how much I wanted more. That afternoon, while folding laundry, I heard my father's voice from the living room. "Alex, I think Maya's getting distracted lately. She's not as attentive as before. Probably tired from doing nothing all day," Alex replied with a laugh. Doing nothing. The words hit me like cold water. I kept folding the clothes, slowly, carefully, because anger was dangerous in our house. It made me lose focus. And if I lost focus, I'd lose time. Time I needed to work on CareLink. So I smiled, said nothing, and went back to my laptop that night. That's when I received my first message. It was from a woman named Elena, a nurse who ran an online caregivers group. I had anonymously posted my idea there, asking if people would use an app to share care routines, reminders, and emotional support. Her reply said, "Maya, this could change lives. Don't stop." I read that message 100 times. It was the first time in years someone had told me not to stop, not to sacrifice, not to give, not to wait. Just go. Every night after that, I worked. Sometimes I coded while sitting on the floor beside Mom's bed. Other times, I whispered voice notes to myself while scrubbing dishes so I wouldn't forget new ideas. When Mom had a bad night, I'd stay awake with her until dawn, then grab an hour of sleep before logging into my part-time job. My body ached constantly, but my spirit, for once, began to glow. I didn't need my family's approval anymore. I was building something they couldn't see, something that belonged entirely to me. And when I finally uploaded the first prototype of my app, I whispered to myself, "This is the first thing I've ever done that wasn't for them." I didn't know it then, but that quiet little project, born in the middle of sleepless nights and tears, would one day shake the entire foundation of my family. Elena's first words to me weren't what I expected. "Wow," she said, laughing softly as she looked at me across the small cafe table. "You look nothing like someone who's been coding through the night." I smiled weakly. "Trust me, the concealer's doing most of the work." It was a cold Saturday morning, one of those rare days when I managed to leave the house without guilt chewing at me. Mom was stable, and Dad had taken her to a follow-up appointment. My siblings, of course, were too busy. I'd met Elena online through that caregivers group, but seeing her in person felt strange, like meeting someone who already knew too much about me. She had warm brown eyes, the kind that made you want to tell the truth. "I'm glad you came," she said, sipping her coffee. "I read your post about CareLink again last night. You have no idea how many people need this." Her belief in me felt unreal. My own family didn't even believe I could handle a simple grocery trip without calling for help. "I don't even know if I can finish it," I admitted. "I'm not trained for this. I just learn as I go." Elena smiled. "That's exactly why you will finish it. You're building it from experience, not ego." That word, ego, stuck in my head. It was something my siblings had too much of, and something I was never allowed to have. I told her about the nights I worked while everyone slept, about Mom's worsening condition, about how Dad barely looked at me unless something needed fixing. Elena listened quietly, never interrupting, just nodding every few minutes. "You're carrying everyone," she said finally, "but no one's carrying you." I didn't realize I was crying until I felt a tear slip down my cheek. For years I'd been invisible, a helper, a background character in everyone else's story. But in that little cafe, someone saw me. That meeting changed everything. Elena introduced me to a local tech mentorship program that helped women with startup ideas. I hesitated at first. I couldn't imagine telling Dad or my siblings that I wanted to go. They'd laugh, or worse, forbid it. So Elena came up with a plan. "You tell them you're volunteering at the clinic," she said, grinning. "Technically, you are helping people." And that's exactly what I did. Every Saturday, I'd leave the house dressed in my worn-out sneakers and a hoodie, carrying a small backpack. Dad would nod approvingly. "Good, Maya. Keep doing something useful." He had no idea that inside that backpack were notebooks filled with app sketches and user flow diagrams. At the mentorship program, I felt alive. I met people who talked about innovation, funding, user experience, words I'd never been allowed to speak at home. For once, I wasn't just the caretaker. I was the creator. Elena became my closest friend. She'd stay up late helping me debug errors or rehearse presentation lines for pitch events. Sometimes she'd bring sandwiches when I forgot to eat. "You're going to make it," she'd say every time I doubted myself, but back at home, the contrast was brutal. One night, after I returned from a mentorship meeting, Alex was sitting in the living room, scrolling through his phone. He didn't even look up when he said, "You're late. Did you at least make dinner before running off to whatever hobby you're doing now?" I clenched my fists but said nothing, because I knew something he didn't. This hobby would soon make me free. As I walked past him toward my room, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My eyes looked tired but determined, and for the first time, I didn't see the shadow of my family's needs. I saw someone becoming her own light. The day my secret nearly died began with my father's voice, deep, sharp, and colder than I'd ever heard it. "Maya!" It was early Sunday morning. The sun had barely risen, but his voice sliced through the walls like thunder. My heart dropped. I rushed into the living room, wiping my hands on my old sweater. He stood by the couch, holding something I recognized instantly, my mentorship event badge, the one Elena had helped me print. It dangled from his fingers like a piece of evidence. "What's this?" he asked, his tone tight and dangerous. "It's just a—" "Don't lie to me." His eyes were fierce. "You told me you were volunteering at the clinic." "I am," I said softly, though my throat felt dry. It's a project to help caregivers. It's part of a—" He cut me off with a bitter laugh. "A project? Maya, you barely have time to sleep. Your mother needs you. This house needs you. And you're sneaking out for nonsense?" My chest tightened. "It's not nonsense, Dad. I'm building something that could actually help people like Mom. Like us." "Help people like us?" he repeated, his face twisting. "We don't need some app, Maya. We need you. You're the only one who actually stays." He said it like a compliment, but it sounded like a curse. By then, Alex and Tasha had wandered in, half awake but ready for the show. "What's going on?" Alex mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "Our sister," Dad said bitterly, "has been sneaking around pretending she's some kind of businesswoman, playing with computers while her mother's sick." Tasha snickered. "Oh, wow. I didn't know we had a genius in the house." My pulse hammered in my ears. "I'm not playing," I said, my voice trembling. "I've been building something real, something that's already helping people." Alex rolled his eyes. "You? Helping people online? Maya, you can't even keep the internet bill paid without asking me." "That's because I used my paycheck to buy Mom's insulin last month," I snapped before I could stop myself. The room went silent. Dad's eyes flickered, not with guilt, but disappointment. "You should have told me. That was irresponsible." "Like how everyone else forgets her medication days?" I said quietly. "Like how I've been the one making sure she eats, sleeps, breathes? I can't keep doing everything, Dad." His jaw clenched. "You will do what's expected of you." That was when I realized I could cure every sickness in the world, and it would still never be enough for them. I looked at my siblings, leaning lazily against the wall, watching me like I was a soap opera. Tasha smirked, and Alex whispered something that made her laugh. I felt something inside me snap. "I'm done explaining," I said, my voice shaking. "I'll still care for Mom, but I won't keep living like I don't matter." My father's face hardened. "As long as you live under this roof, you will do what I say." "Then maybe I won't live under this roof anymore." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. But once they were out, I didn't take them back. I turned and walked toward my room, leaving them in stunned silence. My hands trembled as I shut the door, but my heart, for the first time, felt steady. That night, I called Elena. She listened quietly as I told her everything. "I knew this would happen," she said softly. "But Maya, sometimes kindness costs too much." And as I sat there in the dark, the words hit me hard. Because for years, kindness had been my currency, and I was finally broke. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I wasn't tired,
My whole body ached, but because I couldn't stop hearing my father's words echoing in my head. You will do what's expected of you. Expected. That word used to keep me obedient, but now it burned. After everyone went to bed, I crept into the kitchen where my old laptop sat on the counter. The house was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator. I plugged in my headphones, opened my laptop, and started coding. It became my ritual. Every night after caring for Mom, after washing the dishes and ironing Dad's shirts, I would sneak into that small kitchen and build my dream piece by piece. I learned to code between sobs, taught myself design between yawns, and tested every feature with trembling fingers. Some nights, I cried so hard I had to step outside just to breathe. I wasn't crying because of the work. I was crying because of the loneliness. Every key I pressed reminded me that no one in that house would ever clap for me. But still, I kept going. Elena became my anchor. She'd message me at midnight, checking in. Her encouragement kept me alive more than food did. One night, as I worked, I heard a weak voice from Mom's room. Maya? I froze. I rushed in, wiping my tears before I got to her bedside. Hey, Mama, I'm here. She smiled faintly. You're working late again. I hesitated. Yeah, just trying something new. She touched my hand. I don't say it enough, but I'm proud of you. Those words nearly broke me. I wanted to tell her everything, about CareLink, about my dreams, about the life I was secretly building. But I knew if Dad found out, it would only cause more fights, so I just nodded and said, thank you. When she drifted back to sleep, I whispered into the dark, I'm doing this for you too. Weeks turned into months. My app started getting attention in small caregiver groups online. People began downloading it, leaving comments like, this makes my day easier, and finally, someone understands. Every message felt like a small miracle, but success came at a price. My health began to suffer. I lost weight, my eyes were constantly red, and my hands cramped from typing. One night, I nearly fainted while helping Mom to the bathroom. Dad noticed my exhaustion, but didn't ask why. He just said, you need to manage your time better, Maya. I wanted to scream. Manage my time? Between caregiving, 2 part-time jobs, and a secret business, there was no time left to manage. Still, I pressed on, because for once, my pain had purpose. Then, one night, Elena called me in a panic. Maya, did you see it? See what? I asked, confused. Your app. It's trending in the caregiver forum. People are sharing it everywhere. I froze, staring at the glowing screen. The notifications were endless. Downloads, reviews, messages. My heart raced. After years of being invisible, people finally saw something I created. I wanted to scream, to cry, to dance, but I couldn't make a sound, because right outside my door, I could hear my father's voice. Alex, he said, you might need to start helping with the bills. Maya looks like she's burning out. Alex laughed. She'll survive. She always does. And that was the moment I decided. I wouldn't just survive anymore. I would rise, even if it meant burning everything that kept me small. The night my brother celebrated his 28th birthday was the night I realized just how invisible I truly was. The house buzzed with noise and laughter. Music thumped through the walls, lights flickered, and the smell of expensive perfume and grilled meat filled every corner. Balloons were tied to the staircase, and the dining table groaned under trays of food. Alex was in his element, laughing, shaking hands, and boasting about his new business opportunities. I stood near the kitchen doorway, wearing an old sweater that smelled faintly of detergent and exhaustion, holding a tray of drinks. No one noticed me. Not once did he introduce me as his sister. They called me sweetheart or helpful one, and one woman even handed me her empty plate, thinking I was hired help. I smiled politely and took it, because correcting her didn't seem worth it. I'd gotten used to that, the background treatment. It was the same way they ignored my birthday 2 months earlier, pretending to forget, even though I'd cooked dinner for Mom that night and bought her flowers with the last of my paycheck. Now,
Watching Alex unwrap his new watch, a gift from Dad, I wondered how many years I'd wasted waiting for them to care. Mom stayed in her room, too weak for the noise, and I checked on her between serving drinks. She smiled when I peeked in. "It's loud out there." "Yeah," I whispered, tucking her blanket. "Don't worry, I'll make sure they clean up after." She chuckled weakly. "You always do." Back in the kitchen, I saw Tasha filming a video for social media. She pouted at her phone and said, "Celebrating family, always together." The irony almost made me laugh. When the guests finally began to leave, I started cleaning. My siblings disappeared. Tasha went out with her friends, and Alex was passed out on the couch. Dad thanked me half-heartedly before heading to bed. By midnight, the house was quiet again. I was scrubbing wine stains off the counter when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Elena. "Maya, check your email right now." I frowned, drying my hands and grabbing my laptop. When I opened my inbox, I froze. There it was, an email from Tech Today magazine. "Congratulations, Maya Brooks. Your app CareLink has been featured in our Top 10 Innovative Health Startups to Watch segment." My hands covered my mouth as I read it again and again. There was a small paragraph about me, describing how my app was bridging empathy and technology for caregivers around the world. My heart pounded. I scrolled down and saw comments from strangers. People were tagging CareLink, sharing their stories, thanking the creator. In that moment, I felt seen, not by my family, not by the people I'd spent years serving, but by the world beyond them. Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't from sadness this time. They were from relief. I wanted to run into Mom's room and tell her, but she was asleep. So I sat there in the kitchen, lit only by the laptop screen, and whispered, "We did it, Mama." Then I glanced through the doorway. Alex was still snoring on the couch, his expensive watch glinting under the lamp. Tasha's shoes were tossed carelessly on the floor. Dad's jacket hung on the chair, the same one I'd ironed that morning. They had no idea what had just happened. And for the first time, I didn't want to tell them. Let them keep laughing, I thought. Let them keep underestimating me. Because soon, the world that ignored me inside these walls would know my name outside of them. And when that happened, their laughter would mean nothing at all. When the article about my app came out, I thought maybe, just maybe, my family would finally see me. I didn't expect praise or parades. I just hoped for a simple, "We're proud of you, Maya." But I should have known better. 2 days after the feature went live, my father called me into the living room. Alex and Tasha were already there, sitting on the couch like they'd been waiting for a show. "Maya," Dad said, his voice calm but sharp, "I heard about your little project." The word little stabbed deeper than it should have. I nodded carefully. "Yes, it's called CareLink. I've been working on it for a while." Alex grinned. "You mean we've been working on it?" I blinked. "What?" He leaned back, smug. "I told Dad and some of his friends that I helped you with the business side. You know, marketing, outreach, investments. It makes the story sound more believable." My stomach twisted. "You lied?" Tasha shrugged. "Relax, Maya. He just made it sound like a family effort. It helps the image. People love a good sibling success story." I stared at them in disbelief. "You had nothing to do with it." Dad frowned. "Now don't start arguments. Your brother's contacts are valuable. It doesn't hurt to let people think you had some help." "But it's not true," I said, my voice cracking. "I worked on it alone, every night while you all—" Alex interrupted, smirking. "While we what? Lived our lives? Don't be dramatic." Something inside me snapped. "I built this while caring for Mom, paying bills and keeping this house together. You did nothing." The room went quiet. Dad's eyes hardened. "That's enough, Maya. You're being ungrateful. We supported you." "Supported me?" I laughed bitterly. "By mocking me? By calling me lazy, unambitious? You didn't even notice I had a company." Tasha crossed her arms. "Well, you didn't tell us either. That's shady, you know." I looked at her, speechless. It hit me then. No matter what I achieved, they would twist it into something ugly. Dad stood up, trying to sound wise. "Listen, you're still new to this.
Business is complicated. You need family guidance. I've already spoken to one of my colleagues. He's interested in helping you manage the financial side. My chest went cold. You what? He smiled faintly, like he'd done me a favor. I set up a meeting for tomorrow. It's best if you let me handle negotiations. I stared at him, realizing exactly what was happening. They weren't proud. They were positioning themselves, ready to control what I'd built. I don't need your help, I said quietly. Maya, he warned, don't be foolish. You're not ready to run something like this alone. I've been running it alone, I said, standing, from day one. Tasha rolled her eyes. You're being selfish. This family deserves a piece of what you're doing. I turned toward her, my voice steady now. This family already got all of me. My time, my money, my sanity. You don't get my dream, too. Then I walked out. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding, but I didn't stop until I reached my room. I locked the door, sank onto the floor, and cried. Not out of sadness, but out of pure exhaustion. They had taken credit for everything my entire life, but this time, I wouldn't let them. I opened my laptop, found the email from the investors who had reached out after the article, and whispered, it's time. That night, I began the process to sell the company, in my name, alone. Because sometimes, the only way to survive love that suffocates is to walk away from it, even if it breaks your heart. The day I sold my company, the sky was gray, one of those dull mornings where even the sunlight seems tired. It felt fitting, almost poetic. I sat in the corner booth of a quiet cafe, a cup of coffee gone cold beside my laptop. Across from me were two investors, both polite, both smiling. Men in neat suits who talked about growth, projections, and acquisition strategy. Words that once would have terrified me. Now they only made me stronger. Ms. Brooks, one of them said, your app has potential beyond what you've done already. It's rare to see something built with such empathy. Empathy. The very thing my family had drained from me. Now it was the reason my company was valuable. I smiled faintly. Thank you. I just wanted to make something that helps people like me. They exchanged a quick nod, then slid a contract across the table. The number at the bottom made my chest tighten, a figure I'd only ever seen in dreams. All I had to do was sign. But my hand hesitated, because part of me still felt guilty. Guilty for winning without them, for succeeding in silence. I thought of Mom's voice, soft and fragile. You're such a good girl, Maya. Would she think I was betraying the family by keeping this to myself? No. I shook the thought away. I wasn't betraying anyone. I was simply surviving differently now. I picked up the pen and signed my name. The men smiled, shaking my hand. Congratulations, Ms. Brooks. You've just become a millionaire. The word didn't register at first. Millionaire. Me. The unpaid caretaker. The quiet one. The family shadow. When I stepped out of the cafe, the world looked different. The air was colder, cleaner. My phone buzzed with new notifications. Emails, legal documents, bank transfer confirmations. But the first person I called wasn't an accountant or a lawyer. It was Elena. She answered on the first ring. You did it, didn't you? I laughed, the sound breaking halfway through. It's done. She squealed so loud I had to pull the phone from my ear. Oh, Maya, I'm so proud of you. You did it your way. I leaned against the cold wall of the building and let the wind hit my face. Yeah, my way. We talked for a while, about what came next, about keeping things quiet until everything was finalized. She reminded me that peace wasn't about revenge, it was about release. But part of me still ached for something I couldn't name. When I got home that evening, Dad was in the living room watching TV, Alex scrolling through his phone, and Tasha painting her nails. Same as always. No one looked up when I entered. Maya, Dad said without glancing away from the screen, don't forget to transfer Alex's allowance tomorrow. He's still job hunting. I froze, staring at him. Allowance? As if nothing had changed. As if I still owed them everything. Sure, I murmured. Tomorrow. That night after everyone was asleep, I opened my banking app. The new balance glowed across the screen. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. I transferred each of their monthly allowances, just like always. Then with a deep breath, I scheduled an automatic stop. Effective tomorrow. My fingers hovered for a moment before pressing confirm. When I did, something inside me clicked. A quiet, satisfying freedom. The world didn't shift. The air didn't explode with fireworks, but my heart felt lighter. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair and whispered, "This ends tomorrow." They would wake up to the same comfort, the same expectation, not knowing that everything was about to change. And for once, I didn't feel guilty. By the next morning, the silence in the house felt heavier than usual. I woke up before dawn, made breakfast for Mom, and watched her eat in slow, careful bites. She looked tired, but her eyes were soft when they met mine. "You look peaceful today," she said quietly. I smiled. Maybe I finally am. She didn't ask why. Maybe she saw something in me that no one else ever cared to notice. After I helped her back to bed, I went to my room, closed the door, and opened my laptop. The numbers were still there. Real. Mine. That's when I decided to tell them. Not because they deserved to know, but because I was tired of being small in my own story. I sent a message to the family group chat. Family meeting, video call, 7 p.m. Everyone must join. By evening, they were all there. The screen lit up with familiar faces. Dad at his desk, Alex lounging with a smirk, Tasha adjusting her camera to catch her good side. "Maya," Dad began, sighing. "What's so urgent? You could have just told us whatever this is in person." I looked at them all, calm but steady. "I sold my company." Just like that. The same words that had opened this story. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Tasha laughed. "What company?" "The app I built," I said evenly. "CareLink." Alex's smirk faltered. "Wait, what do you mean? Sold?" "I mean," I said, holding their gaze, "it's been bought. Fully. For several million." The silence that followed was almost satisfying. Their faces twisted. Confusion, disbelief, then something darker. Dad leaned forward. "You're joking." "I'm not." He blinked, stunned. "How? When? You didn't tell us." "I didn't need to," I interrupted. "You all made it clear you didn't believe in me. So I did it alone." Tasha forced a laugh. "You expect us to believe that? You, the one who could barely afford gas last month?" I shrugged. "You don't have to believe it." But the deal's closed. The money's transferred. Alex's voice rose. "So what now? You're rich and we just, what, clap for you?" I stared at him. "No. You live without me. Starting today, I'm cutting off all the allowances." Their mouths dropped open. Dad's face reddened. "Maya, that's not your decision to make. We're family. We help each other."
I did help, I said softly. For years, while you ignored me, mocked me, and called me a maid, I kept this family afloat. I gave everything I had, my money, my time, my dreams, but I can't keep bleeding for people who only take. Tasha crossed her arms. "You're being dramatic." I leaned closer to the camera. "No, I'm being free." Alex slammed his hand on the table. "You think you can just walk away? You can't survive without us." I smiled faintly, the same way I had the first time I said it. "No, Alex, you can't survive without me." Before any of them could respond, I clicked end call. The screen went black, but the echo of their shouting lingered in my mind. A noise I'd heard my whole life, finally fading into silence. I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the dark screen. For the first time, I didn't see the tired caretaker or the invisible helper. I saw someone reborn. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping softly against the window. It sounded like applause. I let out a shaky breath and whispered to the quiet room,
This time, I don't owe anyone anything. And the silence, for once, felt like peace. For the first time in years, my phone stayed quiet. No messages, no calls, no late-night "Maya, can you send money" texts. Just silence. It should have felt peaceful, and for a while it did. I slept through the night without waking to the sound of someone needing me. I made breakfast just for myself. Eggs and toast, warm and simple. No one complained about sugar levels or asked for extra coffee. But as the days passed, the silence grew heavier. Not comforting anymore, but haunting. The house felt different, too. Without the constant noise of my siblings dropping by for food or cash, it was almost eerie. Dad kept to himself, rarely speaking. Mom noticed, of course. "They don't visit anymore," she said one afternoon, staring out the window from her wheelchair. I smiled gently. Maybe they're just busy. But we both knew the truth. Busy wasn't the word. Angry was. By the third week, the calls started, not to me, but to Mom. I overheard one of them when I walked by her room. "Mom, please," Alex was saying, his voice desperate. "The rent's due. Just ask Maya to help out this once." Mom's eyes flickered toward me, her lips pressing together. "She's already done enough, Alex." There was a pause, then shouting. "Enough? She's our sister. She can't just abandon us." Mom hung up quietly and looked at me with sad eyes. "He doesn't understand." I nodded. None of them ever did. Still, guilt began to creep in. I'd worked so hard to escape their control, but every time I saw Mom's tired face, a part of me wondered if freedom had made me cruel. That guilt nearly broke me, until the news came. One morning, Elena showed up at my apartment unannounced, holding her phone out. "You need to see this." It was a social media post from Tasha. A photo of her empty apartment. The caption read, "Some people forget who helped them rise, but karma never does." The comments were full of pity, friends offering to help her recover from betrayal. I almost laughed. Betrayal? I had paid her bills for 3 years. I'd helped her through every financial mess, every breakup, every broken nail of a crisis. And now, in her mind, I was the villain because I stopped. Elena must have read my thoughts because she said softly, "Let them talk. You earned your peace." But peace didn't come easy. That night, as I tucked Mom into bed, she looked at me and said, "Your father's been worried. The bills are piling up. Maybe you could—" I cut her off gently. "Mom, please. I can't go back to that." She sighed, her eyes full of quiet hurt. "I know, it's just hard watching them struggle." I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "They're struggling because they never learned how to stand on their own. Maybe now they will." Still, as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the ache in my chest. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted fairness. But fairness, I was learning, never came without pain. 3 days later, I got a knock on my door. When I opened it, Alex was standing there, his eyes red, his pride cracked. "Maya," he said quietly, "I need help." The moment hung heavy between us. The brother who once mocked me, now trembling on my doorstep. And as I stared at him, my heart broke and hardened all at once. The silence after the storm had finally ended, and the real reckoning had begun. Alex looked nothing like the brother I remembered. The sharp arrogance he always carried was gone, replaced by something I had never seen before: fear. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled, and his shoulders slumped. For a second, I almost didn't recognize him. "Maya," he said again, voice cracking. "Please, I just need a little help." I stepped aside silently, motioning for him to come in. He hesitated, then entered, looking around my small apartment. It wasn't fancy, I hadn't touched most of the money yet, but it was neat, peaceful. The kind of space that didn't reek of dependency or chaos. He sat on the edge of the couch, wringing his hands. I didn't know where else to go. Tasha's staying with a friend. Dad's angry all the time. Mom, she won't even talk to me anymore. I crossed my arms. You mean she's tired of your excuses? He flinched. I messed up, okay? I know I said awful things, but I was scared. I frowned. Scared of what? That I'd finally stop being the family wallet? His jaw tightened. You don't get it, Maya. You're the one who changed everything. One day we're a family, and the next you just cut us off. You broke us. I let out a bitter laugh. No, Alex, I didn't break us. I stopped holding us together. He stared at the floor, silent. I sat opposite him, my voice calmer now. Do you even realize what I gave up? I took care of Mom when you were out drinking. I paid bills while you bragged about imaginary business plans. You called me boring, weak, invisible. But I was the one keeping you alive. He looked up, eyes glistening. I know, he whispered. I didn't see it then. Something inside me softened, but I didn't let it show. Alex, I said quietly, when I ended those allowances, I didn't do it to punish you. I did it because I had to save myself. You never saw me as your sister, only as your safety net. He rubbed his face, muttering, I'm sorry. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the fridge. Then he said, Please, Maya, just one more month. I'll get back on my feet, I swear. And that was the breaking point, because I knew those words too well. I'd heard them all my life. Promises that turned to excuses. I stood up slowly. No. He blinked, confused. What? No, I repeated. I can't give you money, Alex. Not anymore. His voice rose. You have more than enough. You're rich now, and you're letting your own family starve? Rich? I snapped. Do you think this money fell from the sky? I earned it with sleepless nights and tears you never saw. You all drained me until there was nothing left. And now you're angry that I finally stopped bleeding. He stood, angry now. You've changed. Good, I said, my voice steady. I was supposed to. He stared at me for a long time, his expression torn between shame and resentment. Then, without another word, he turned and left. When the door closed, I sank to the floor, my body shaking. Elena called later that night. When I told her what happened, she sighed softly. I know it hurts, Maya, but you did the right thing. You can't heal in the same place you were broken. I looked around my quiet apartment. No yelling, no guilt, no demands. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Still, I knew this wasn't over. Families like mine didn't crumble quietly. They exploded. And deep down, I sensed another storm was coming. A month passed after Alex walked out of my apartment, and I didn't hear from any of them again. No calls, no messages, nothing. At first, it felt like relief, a clean wound that could finally start to heal. But peace has a strange way of turning into emptiness when it's too quiet for too long. I tried to fill the silence with work, with reading, with long walks, but somewhere deep inside, a knot of worry began to grow. That worry became fear when Elena showed up at my door one evening, her face pale. Maya, she said softly, I just got off the phone with a nurse from your mother's old clinic. She's back in the hospital. My heart dropped. What happened? Her blood pressure spiked. They said it was stress and lack of proper medication. I felt the air leave my lungs. But Dad, Elena's eyes met mine. He couldn't afford her prescriptions anymore. The room spun around me. For all my anger, for all the boundaries I had drawn, I never wanted her to suffer. My mother was the only one who never mocked me, who at least tried to understand. Within an hour, I was at the hospital. Mom lay in a white bed, pale and thin, her breathing shallow. I stood at the door for a moment, frozen. Guilt poured through me like ice water. She turned her head weakly. Maya? Her voice was soft, but it broke me. I rushed to her side and took her hand. I'm here, Mama. She smiled faintly. I knew you'd come. Tears blurred my vision. I should have come sooner. She squeezed my hand gently. You needed time to heal. I understand. The nurse came in with a clipboard explaining the situation. Unpaid bills, delayed refills, and late checkups. I didn't hesitate. Put everything under my name, I said. I'll cover it. That night, I sat by her bed, listening to the steady beep of the monitor. Elena stayed with me, quietly flipping through her notebook. After a while, she said, You know they'll find out it was you. I don't care, I whispered. She didn't deserve to suffer for their mistakes. And I meant it. Over the next few days, Mom's health began to improve. The nurses whispered about how quickly the bills had been paid. It didn't matter if the others never said thank you. I didn't do it for them. But they did find out, sooner than I expected. 3 days later, I was in the hospital cafeteria when I heard a familiar voice. Maya. I turned. Dad stood there, older than I remembered. His once straight posture was bent, his eyes tired. Behind him was Tasha, her makeup gone, her face blotchy from crying. I froze. You paid the bills, Dad said quietly. Didn't you? I didn't answer. He nodded slowly, shame filling his eyes. We didn't have anyone else. For the first time in my life, I saw him not as the strict father who demanded perfection, but as a man who'd lost control of everything he thought he could manage. Tasha spoke next, her voice trembling. Maya, I'm sorry. We all are. The words hit me harder than I expected. Dad's voice cracked. You were right. We depended on you too much. We never saw what it cost you. I looked at them, truly looked, and saw regret, raw and heavy. I didn't want this, I whispered. I just wanted to be seen. Dad nodded, tears in his eyes. Now we do. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the first step towards something real. And as I walked back to Mom's room, I realized that even though I'd built my freedom through distance, compassion was still the part of me that made me whole. It happened 2 weeks after Mom was discharged from the hospital. She came home healthier, calmer, and quieter. The house that once echoed with shouting now hummed with uneasy peace. Even Dad spoke softer, as if afraid his words might shatter the fragile truce holding us together. Then one morning, I got a message from him. Maya, we'd like to visit. All of us, if that's okay. I stared at it for a long time. Months ago, those words would have terrified me, but now, I just took a deep breath and typed back, Okay, Sunday at 3. When the doorbell rang that weekend, I was ready. My new home wasn't a mansion, just a modest house on a quiet street, surrounded by tall oaks and soft light. I'd bought it after the sale but never told anyone. It wasn't luxury that drew me to it. It was the peace. Every corner whispered freedom. I opened the door to see them all standing there. Dad, Alex, Tasha, and Mom in her wheelchair, smiling nervously. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mom said softly, You look happy here, sweetheart. I am, I said. They stepped inside hesitantly, eyes scanning the neat, sunlit space. There were framed photos on the walls, not of us, but of landscapes and sunsets. I'd learned to decorate with calmness, not memory. Alex was the first to break the silence. This place is nice.
Thank you, I said. Sit down. They gathered in the living room, their faces uncertain. Dad cleared his throat. Maya, before anything else, I want to say, I'm sorry. Tasha nodded, tears already forming. We were terrible to you. I was. I didn't realize how much you did until it was gone. Alex rubbed his hands together. I said things I shouldn't have. I thought you'd always be there. I took advantage of that. Mom reached for my hand. They've learned, Maya. We all have. I looked at them. This family that had drained me dry, now looking at me as if I were the air they'd been missing. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt power. I forgave you a long time ago,
I said quietly. Not for you, but for me. I had to let go of the pain or it would have eaten me alive. Tears slid down Tasha's cheeks. Then can we start over? I smiled faintly. We can, but on my terms. Dad frowned slightly. What do you mean? I stood, my voice steady. From now on, we have boundaries. You will not insult me, manipulate me, or guilt me for the life I chose. I'll help where I can, but I will never sacrifice myself again. If those lines are crossed, we're done. Alex looked down, shame clouding his eyes. We understand. Mom squeezed my hand. You've grown stronger than all of us. I smiled at her. You taught me how to care, Mama. But I had to teach myself how to stop breaking for people who wouldn't bend for me. We sat together for hours after that, talking softly. No yelling, no blame. Just slow, awkward healing. When they left that evening, Dad turned at the door. I don't know if we deserve another chance, he said, but thank you for giving it anyway. I nodded. Just don't waste it. As their car disappeared down the street, I stood on the porch, the golden sunset warming my face. The girl who once begged to be seen was gone. In her place stood a woman who didn't need permission to exist. The morning after their visit, I woke to sunlight spilling through my curtains, warm and golden. For the first time in years, I didn't wake to the sound of coughing, arguing, or guilt whispering in my ear. Just peace. I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the leaves sway outside. The world seemed softer somehow, quieter, but alive. My phone buzzed with messages from Elena. Elena, how did it go yesterday? Me. Better than I expected. Elena, I told you, people change when they have no choice. I smiled. She was right. Sometimes life doesn't teach through love, it teaches through loss. Later that week, I was invited to speak at a caregiving conference in the city. They wanted me to share how CareLink had started, how it grew, and how it became a voice for the invisible people, the helpers, the healers, the forgotten. Standing backstage, I thought about everything that had brought me here. The endless nights, the tears, the whispers of, "You're not enough." And now, somehow, I was. When I stepped onto the stage, the applause washed over me like sunlight after rain. The room was full. Caregivers, nurses, families, people who lived the same silent struggle I once did. I told them my story, not the version my family used to tell, the dutiful daughter who stayed home. No, this was the truth. I used to believe love meant giving until you had nothing left, I said, my voice steady. But love isn't slavery. Love isn't silence. Sometimes love means walking away so people can finally learn how to stand. The crowd was still, listening, really listening. I smiled softly. CareLink began because I wanted to make sure no one ever felt as unseen as I did. But in building it, I learned something unexpected. You can't pour from an empty cup. You deserve care too. When I finished, the applause rose again, louder this time. Somewhere in the front row, I saw Elena grinning, her hands clapping the hardest. After the event, I walked outside into the crisp air. A familiar car pulled up, Dad's old sedan. The sight of it didn't sting anymore. Mom stepped out first, with Alex and Tasha behind her. She was walking now, slowly, but strong. You were amazing, she said softly. Thank you, I replied. Dad's eyes met mine. We watched online, he said quietly. You make us proud, Maya. It wasn't the empty kind of praise I'd once longed for. It was real, humble, and weighted with understanding. Tasha hugged me tightly. You're the strongest person I know. Alex nodded, smiling faintly. You really did it. I hugged them all, not because I forgot the past, but because I'd finally made peace with it. As they drove away, I stood by the roadside, the city skyline glowing in the distance. For years, I'd lived as their shadow, unseen, unheard, unappreciated. But shadows only exist where light is blocked. Now, there was nothing between me and the sun. I pulled out my phone and started a live video, smiling at the camera. Hey everyone, it's Maya. Tell me where you're watching from. And remember, even if the world overlooks you, never dim your light for anyone. Because when you finally shine, even the shadows will remember your name. I ended the stream and looked at the sky. Vast, open, endless. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt infinite. The shadow was gone. I was the light.